you ever let the color of your skin, where you come from, the environment you grew up in, stop you from chasing your dreams, baby, let's get it. My hand to please don't segregate. Dressed in a suit, I can't relate. Minority report, can't ignore being rich from poor and your credit score. My hand to please don't segregate. Dressed in a suit, I can't relate. Minority report, can't ignore being rich from poor and your credit score. See, all I wanna do.
I sound sad right now. It's too early, bro.
It's early for you.
And we're having my coffee.
Yeah.
But it's early, but I'm super excited and can't wait to dive into what we got going on today. We'll obviously get into more detail, but it's early. It's what? It was 9 a.m. So it's and it's not even early if you think about it.
It's really not.
For
our podcast, it's early.
Right.
We don't record this
normally
early.
we do it in the evening.
Yeah.
But how was your week, man?
Good, man. We had our glamour shots taken for our website.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Our engagement photos.
Yeah. They were Billy's senior photos down in the Haymarket. So we've got the website built out. We just needed some like good pictures for it. And so
I'm excited for that.
So yeah.
Do you care sharing that concept? I'm still hooked on the concept that you did with the books that we did. Or do you want to give that out yet?
No, that's fine. So there was one picture that I had our friend Twee that she's a photographer, and we hired her to take the photos for us. And I kind of just wanted to leave it to her artistic view of what we're trying to do. But there was one photo that I did want to get a shot of, and it was basically I kind of imagine it as being like the banner to the website, and it's of each of us holding a book, and the frame will basically just have like the cover and the title of the book, and then our eyes kind of like reading it or reading each other's book. But the whole concept of the books was, my book was Brandon Turner's book on flipping houses, and then you love a lot of the mindset stuff, and I know one of your favorite books is Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, for sure.
So I brought you one as a gift because you don't have a physical copy,
you, man. And I told you I never even owned a hard copy. I listen to that book every year, and it's just Audible.
So maybe this year you can, or next time you try to reading it and see if you get more out of it.
For sure. No, I'm excited. I'm excited to do some highlighting in there too, because I told you, even just listening to it every year, I get something out of it. Then I'm like, whoa, how, or it clarifies stuff. So no, yeah.
But the whole concept of that photo for me was just showing like my interests are mostly in the flipping side and the actual
numbers and stuff.
Yeah, all that side of stuff, and then yours is all on the mindset.
Told me, bro, I was like, man, that's actually pretty sweet.
And so it was kind of cool because it's going to show both of our sides and how we're like trying to read each other's, and so we're learning from each other. I
was going to say, and it puts us in that where obviously you have your, like we both have our own branding and stuff.
Right.
So
So it was a lot of fun though. I mean, stuck around, had a beer afterwards, and just us doing what we do.
It was fun. And actually, I did a quick behind the scenes, so I can't wait to share that because it's actually it's great because it's I thought it came out serious, but then there's the us side, just being us, and the funny side. So I think it shares both, and it explains a little more on the whole podcast. So I can't wait to share that one. We might just release that here soon.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Maybe after, I don't know, we'll release it after this podcast or something.
We'll wing it.
But you got book of the week?
Yeah, it actually leads me into book of the week. So this week, I am choosing The E-Myth Revisited by Mac. I don't know if it's Michael Gerber or Gerber, because I've heard both. I want to say it's Gerber, but that's kind of just like one of the staple books for anyone getting into entrepreneurship. And essentially, if you haven't read it, what it is he goes over the different levels and phases and kind of issues that business owners run into, especially in the beginning of their journey. And it starts out with explaining how businesses have technicians, managers, and the entrepreneur. So the entrepreneur is the visionary, the forward-thinking person. And the manager is the person that, makes sure that things are getting done, and it's a manager, what a manager does. And then the technician is the person that does the actual technical work of whatever that business is, and how, first time business owners, or when you start out, you're doing all those things. But it's not efficient or practical, and it makes no sense to stay in the technician side, at least usually. And that's what a lot of business owners do. And that's inevitably what leads them to their downfall and why so many small businesses fail. I've said this time and time again, and I've seen it over and over at different jobs that I've worked at, where you've got someone that's a really great technician, and then they get promoted to manager, and it's just like, then they just bomb and they fail horribly because
that's not
being a technician or being good at a technical job doesn't mean that you're going to be good at managing people that do that job or even managing that job itself. So a lot of times, you have someone, let's say, for example, a plumber that has been working for a company for 15 years and they're great at that actual work. And they're like, okay, well, I love doing this work and I'm good at it. I'm going to start my own plumbing company. So, by then, they're probably master plumbers. They can do what they have all the licenses they need, and they get into small business ownership. But now as the owner, you're the plumber and you have to worry about invoices and you have to worry about taxes and you have to worry about marketing and you have to worry about hiring and firing. That's a lot to do. Yeah. And yes, you can do it, but there's no way you're ever going to scale or grow. And then in the book, Michael also talks about creating your business on a platform that mimics like a franchise. So if you're able to make your business run like a franchise, then you're able to work on your business, not in your business. So basically, you're not having to do all the day-to-day little things. You can hire people to do the right people in the right spots. You can manage all that without you. And then it also kind of like a secondary benefit to that is that your business running as a franchise is also now more enticing to anyone who would want to buy the business. So if you have any desire to sell your business, if you run it like a franchise, all these systems and are in place where you can just sell those systems now. You're not as vital. Yeah, you're not as vital to the operations. So yeah, I mean, it's a really great book.
And you touched on it. I think it was actually the one that we just released this past week. With Evan, where you said, so you started off and I love that you said it this way, with good habits right off the bat. Right. And it's true. Cause I mean, I've been there. We all, and I'm also wondering, I also with my mindset, is it because of where we come from that we do that? You know what I mean? Where you, in your mind, it's like the more we can save and the, cause that's how we grew up.
I think ultimately it's ego when I really break it down. I think, and I don't even think it's a cultural thing or I just think it's ego. I think when you start out with this business, again, you think you're so good at that technical job that you're going to be good at running it. And it's also like, well, I started this, I got to do all the work now, and it really isn't.
Well, but I feel like it's like money, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of it is money.
A lot of it is money. Like, oh, well, I can save this much doing the plumbing. I can save this much doing my accounting. So it's also that balance too, where, I'm definitely a big believer that you got to start somewhere. And it's like, if that's what you have to do, you have to do. But that's why I love what you said last week, because it's like you started with good habits right off the bat. And it's like, if you do,
I say a lot of good stuff, man. You should really listen to me.
Listen to start your own podcast, bro.
Hey, I'll give you ideas.
But no, yeah, great. Are we ready for our?
You're looking to interrupt.
I was waiting. I'm like,
all right. Well, we got Zach. Zach Harsin. No, I'm actually going to introduce him this time. We got Zach Harsin. He's a local entrepreneur, investor, doing humongous things and really great things for the community too. So I'm really excited about this one. So let's go ahead and bring him in now.
How you doing, man?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Did I just scare you with my with my horn?
No. No. My wife and I watch Superstore at least the first few seasons. So that's all I think of every time I hear you do that.
I had an argument with a buddy, or actually not just a buddy, but a few people where it's like, no, it's with an M. And I'm like, mine's with a P. I throw a P in there. And I had the horn sound. I was literally arguing like, no, it's with a P, and they're like, no, it's mama or B. Like I've heard B. It's like you can't tell me what I'm doing. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. We're excited. So we are in location. If you could run down a little bit of where we're at, that way the people know.
Not too much though. We want to.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. We're in Southwest Lincoln right now, 8400 Cody Drive. We are sitting in what will be our new space for next fall for Acton Academy here in Lincoln, and then across the way over there is where we were last year, as well as all the indoor space with the gym and everything that we showed you guys before we came on.
Can't wait to dig into all that. But let's take it back. I always like to hear your story. Where are you from?
Yeah, origin story, right?
Yep.
So originally from Blair, Nebraska. So just north of Omaha. My dad was a teacher and coach there at the high school, and came down here to go to school and just never left. So my senior year, kind of, moving into the entrepreneur journey, my senior year of college, I actually bought into a personal training and boot camp studio here in Lincoln. And managed that through my senior year, and then started dating which I don't necessarily always suggest, but started dating my business partner, and then we then we got married within the year of me graduating. So it all happened pretty quick, but
Wow.
And so that was kind of the start of real jumping off, if you will, into the deep end of entrepreneurship, which led to getting into running events as a way of marketing our gym, which led to a whole nother business with running events and event management, which led to a merger with one of the largest companies in the Midwest that puts on running events. And then real estate just kind of kept calling. And finally I said, okay, I got to do this. And so I sold my equity in that company and jumped in feet first with real estate, and have been doing that for a few years. And then, kind of what we'll touch on real estate, I'm sure, but what we're going to kind of spend most of the time talking is the school. And God kind of threw this in our laps, and, we just said, okay, here we go. And that was a little over a year ago, and now we're sitting in this space and excited to dive into everything. But I don't want to give away too much because I want you guys to.
You
to be
just
able to
dropped
do
so
it,
many gems there, and it's like basically I'm a big believer that destiny kind of calls you, right? And you got to start somewhere for sure, and you did that. You took action, and then here we are. What you're doing now. But let me take it back a little bit. So with the entrepreneurship mindset, because obviously you just told us that you've had it since day one. Is that a fact? And how did you learn it? Like, was it your parents or?
My mom she's a marriage and family counselor, has her own practice, but not necessarily. My dad was a teacher and coach at the high school. And so it wasn't like they were out starting all these, multi-million-dollar companies or owning businesses necessarily. But I think it just was, I like to build things, and whether that's working on flips or building businesses is kind of what I've come to find, is that I like building things both with my hands, but also building businesses. And like you talked about here in the intro with eMyth, that the disconnect often is that we have those owner operators, but they never become the business owner, right? They're the operator. And where I think my skill set comes in is that I approach it from day one as I want to build this franchise, and I don't want to be operating in the business. I listened to Josh Nix's podcast with you guys yesterday. I listened to that, and he talked about, I want to be able to do it from anywhere in the world on my phone, right? And so that's the 21st century version of eMyth, right? And so the first thing I can remember is selling programs from the Friday night football game on Saturday morning. So we had our stand at the end of the road, and we were trying to sell yesterday's throwaways for 25 cents the next day, and hustling to sell those. Right?
That's awesome.
And so that's the first thing. I mowed lawns. We did that. We scooped snow, did those kinds of things. But yeah, that's the first one.
And with mowing lawn, like, so your parents did kind of push it on you.
I would say they didn't push it on me, but they equipped us to keep going, and it didn't discourage it. I would say, and gave us the things that we needed, whether transportation or gas or their mower. It's all wear and tear and time on them. So
no, that's awesome. And so you did finish college.
Yep. Yeah, I went 4 years to Wesleyan down here, ran track, and the whole time I was there, finished my senior year running track and owning that business, which was all a juggling act, but that's what entrepreneurship is.
Yeah, and it paid off at the end. That's amazing, because you hear that a lot, where like the first business might not be where it's at, right? Like you might fail, but it sounded like you sold your equity. So, I mean, it actually worked.
Yeah. I would say I kind of I don't know if parlay is the right word, but I kind of parlayed my way into the event management side that worked. Our boot camp and personal training studio, looking back, I did all the wrong things. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was a senior in college trying to run a business.
Can you touch on maybe on a couple things that you did wrong that you learned from?
I was probably the E-Myth. I was too worried with being the operator and trying to do the marketing and trying to do the big picture while also not understanding the numbers and just thinking that they would come. Okay. We have this many people on our Facebook page or our email list, but what's our monthly recurring, right? Like what, and not understanding how those all played together. I think that's the biggest thing. And sure, I could have learned that in a classroom setting in a theoretical sense, but learning it in the real world is much more. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then you did mention that you got into real estate along the way there. So what was your first deal and how did that come about?
Yeah. So I always told my wife, I said, because I loved running, I loved putting on those events. I mean, we're putting on events for, 10,000 people. And that was awesome, loading up 6 Penske's, 26-foot Penske's to haul all the equipment and unload it, and managing all that was awesome. And I always told my wife, if there was one thing I would do that wasn't this, it would be flipping houses. And that had always just kind of been something that I wanted to do, even before it was the thing to do, even before it was all over HGTV. Like somehow that was just always something that I wanted to do. And we were really, really close to doing it in high school. My parents almost bought a house, and we just didn't do it with sports and stuff. But so I told her, this was the one thing I would want to do. And I kind of kept putting it off for over a year, probably even a little more, where it was really pressing on me. And I kept saying, no, I'm content. I'm happy with where I'm at. There's growth in this company. I want to keep building this. And God kind of just kept saying, I want you to move. And so finally I said, okay, bit the bullet, sold my equity, went through that of, kind of saying goodbye to friends in a way. Right. And it was the cleanest, best break from a business that you could have. But still it's, you're still saying, I don't want to be a part of this thing anymore. And so, Josh Nix came alongside me at that time. I had 2 realtor friends here in town, Tony Milana and Jamie Shelton, who also came alongside me at that time, and happened to get 2 houses side by side. And that was actually came from an owner of a lot that I bought in conjunction with Tony and Jamie. And the plan there was to do a new build. And then eventually we got these other 2 houses from this guy. And so it was awesome to have 2 side by side. The one we sold on the MLS, and the other one sold directly to a real estate investor as a rental. So to date, I think I've done right at 10 deals. Which, this entire last year, which we'll dive into with the school, has been solely focused on the school. So, we're talking about, a little over 2 years time, but really only about a year and a half that was focused on real estate. Yeah. So
real quick, I want to just make it a point that I think it's really admirable that you realize, like, look, I want to get into this flipping. And I think most people would have kept that first business and try to do the flipping on top of it. But you actually kind of saw that you had, like, I don't want to say limitations, but like you can only give so much focus to so many things. And I feel like focus is also like kind of like a muscle. Like it does kind of, I don't want to waste away, but you can only do it for so long. And so you knew that, and you're just like, you know what, I have to give up this part of my life, sacrifice this so that I can focus on that. And I think most of the people that I know, or anyone, would not do that. They wouldn't even have the insight to think that deep into it. So that's awesome. Like, because
coming from the guy that's hanging on to his W-2 job, is that
what you're well, I'm working towards it though. But yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you yeah, you saw that and you're just like, man, I can't do both, or you can do both, but you're not gonna do either one well.
Yep.
At
Yeah,
that point.
and you focused on the one thing, which is amazing. And I've seen your work. I've seen the houses that you flipped, and they look amazing.
Thank you.
Do you do all the work? Because you said you like to.
Yeah, I can do all of it.
Mhm.
But again, back to E-Myth, great book to
Yeah,
launch us
yeah.
into this podcast.
Seriously, it like worked out perfectly.
Yeah. My goal is to not be there, I enjoy it. I want to always do some of it. But I don't want to be tied to it.
Yeah.
And I can't be with other things that I have going on, like the school. So
did you do that from the beginning though? Like the very first
no,
deal?
those first two houses, I pretty well did
Okay.
most of it. I didn't necessarily, let's see, what didn't I do? I didn't paint and drywall. To me, like, I can do those things, but somebody else can do those so much faster and so much better. And I don't want to be painting trim for a week, in a house. So I've done it all. But I didn't do that. We didn't replace the windows, didn't do the roof, those kinds of things. But, now, I've got one going in Blair right now. And that one I'll probably spend 10 days at total, and the rest of it's being done. And I could spend less time. It's just being up there, it's almost easier for me to drive than it is to find somebody to fill in those gaps. And so and it gets me out of this setting for a few days and lets me do that stuff too.
So I mean, you have one going on right now, then is that something you're gonna definitely keep doing on the side, or are you breaking away from that too?
I don't think I'll break away from real estate. It's just too much fun. And I enjoy it. And that's part of what I want. You guys had Doug Fitzgerald on, and I'm in his mastermind group, and he's done one-on-one coaching with me. And, he talked about, I think they have 5 streams of income right now. One of my goals is having 7 streams of income. And so, so I want those 7 streams. Currently, I think we're at 3, one of which is an Airbnb that we're actually losing. So losing that, but, just real estate will always be something
for sure.
For me, that's my stock market. Like,
same.
So I would much rather be there.
Can you touch on that a little more, please?
That's a really
that's
good
my
idea.
stock market.
Because I'll say it in air, like, I don't have a 401k. I don't have any of that.
Yeah, neither do I.
So if you could touch on that, because I think that's
so I view it as my stock market mainly, and like it more than the stock market, because I have control for the most part over what happens with that asset. With the stock market, I have zero control. Whatever comes out in the news, whatever CEO decides to be a dumbass and do something that he shouldn't, whatever, was it Adventureland that had somebody die? Not that they're trading on but like, there's no control. That company has no control over that for the most part, right? Yeah. But that all affects the value of, and so for me, I just don't like that. I watched my parents go through 2 different times where they pretty much lost their entire, investment that they had. Oh, wow. And so, yes, the real estate market is going to ebb and flow. Yes, it's going to have its bubble bursts and it's, overpricing like we are now, but over time it's going to increase. And like you talked about on, I can't remember which episode it was, but you talked about, your doors and that's your generational thing, right? And that's one of my life goals, is that I want to make a generational impact for my family. Not that I want to just hand them all this free money, right? Exactly. But I want to make generational change. Yeah. And real estate is one of those vehicles.
Yeah. And you touched on I read it somewhere where, for example, if you do put some money in the stock market, let's say McDonald's, for example, you can't go in there and be like, hey, you're making that cheeseburger wrong. That's my money right there. And it's so true. And it's like with real estate, is tangible. You control it. And not to mention, my favorite thing is insurance. Like you put insurance in this money. Yep. So something does happen, the money's there. Like you'll get your money back at least.
And I can leverage. I can use other people's money like you do. I can't go get a loan to buy stocks,
Yeah.
right? They would
Major.
laugh me out of
Yeah.
the room. But I can, on these flips that I'm doing, I'm actually, Dan, I know you don't use any of your own money. There's been deals where I haven't, but I go to the bank and I'm putting 10% of my money, right?
Which
for the
is-
total
yeah.
project cost.
Yeah.
So I'm doing projects where I'm only using 10% of my money, and I'm letting that dollar stretch so much further, where if I took that 10% that I'm using and went and put it in the stocks, it's kind of just I'm throwing a paper clip in the ocean and expecting to see these ripples.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's
No.
great because I know of a lot of people, especially lately with the stuff that happened with GameStop and all that. All of a sudden, there's all this interest, and then with the crypto craze right now going on, everyone's kind of trying to get on board with that. And
Real quick with that, I feel like a lot of it is people thinking that okay, I'm gonna put this money in, tomorrow I'm gonna be rich.
exactly what he said.
Like
Zach
it's
just said,
so go ahead.
You want this big
Yeah.
effect from this small little.
Because I read that on people's news feeds all the time, which is great, right? Like do something with your life, but also don't expect it to be tomorrow.
I mean, and I think in a sense, the stock market is also like real estate, where it's a long game. If you're going to make
Right.
money on that, it's not going to be like overnight that you're going to make millions of dollars. It's going to be you invest here, and then like, or on a consistent basis, you keep investing into it, and it grows over time. But it is a long game, and I think a lot of people, especially in the crypto stuff, are just trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the type of thing where, like,
Yeah.
for me, I said, at least, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, it's your money, do what you want to do with it. But.
And it's controlled too. Like I said, it's tangible. It's there. Like you could drive by it and see it, and you control how much you want to do to it, and the numbers. It's a no brainer to me. Like I'm big on that.
And backtracking a little bit, I don't want to talk down on diversification either. That's super important. But I also know 99.9% of the people aren't going to do what Doug talked about on your guys' episode, where he spent a year researching crypto before he ever
which that was amazing.
Right? So
that
so
just
at that
shows
point,
you the opposite of what we just said. Like for sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
So at that point, he's done the research. He knows what he's getting into. He knows what to expect on a return, and he is wise and educated to do that, versus just saying, I'm going to throw some money at this and see what happens. And that's the same with the stock market for a lot of people, is they either throw money into something that they think they should, like Coca-Cola or, whatever, or they just throw their money to someone else and trust them to get that return. And
it's the easiest thing to do. If you think about it, it's the easiest thing to do, to hand your money over, because you just heard that through the grapevine. You don't want to do research. You just heard, okay, so if I put some money every check or whatever, I'll have some money in the future. And that's where the education comes from. Like what you just said, like Doug studied it for a whole year before jumping in, and people are lazy. They they want the easy way out.
And it goes back to the title of your guys' podcast, Minority Report, right? We're the minority. And for a lot of people that have the W-2 job, that want to stay there, that want the stable paycheck, the 401k in the stock market is the equivalent of the W-2.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Where we're sitting here talking and you're out there listening because you're thinking differently.
Exactly.
And that's what it takes. But it also takes time. It takes energy. It takes education, and sacrifice. Yeah. And so that's also the difference too. So
and like I said, and it's not bashing, right? Like we're not bashing on W-2 employees or nothing. I mean, I used to be one. Oh yeah, Dan over here. For sure, it's not bashing, because I've had that, people kind of hitting me up like, oh well, blah blah blah, and even friends, that, and it's like, I'm not bashing what you're doing. So if you feel like that, this is not for you, and it's fine. It's totally fine. Everybody can choose what to do. We're speaking to the minority with the mindset that we have.
Yep.
And it's one of those too, where it's like, maybe listen to it, and we're not bashing. We need doctors. We need people working at fast food. We need all these employers to keep going. That's just the economy.
In my case, we're working a W-2 job. I also don't have a 401k. I had one at my last job. Then I started kind of educating myself on this stuff, and I was like, "Wow, I'm giving away my money, really giving it away." And so when I started my new job, or my job now, a couple of years ago, the whole onboarding process, like, okay, here's our 401k stuff, and I was like, I don't want it, and I had to sign something to say that I didn't want it.
And people look at you crazy.
I'm crazy, like, you're gonna be living in a box when you're 65, and I'm like, no, I don't believe in the whole concept of that. I think the money managers.
Yeah, and I know there's ways to tap in, right? But guess what? You could tap in to invest, right, in real estate. Look, I mean, that just tells you there's something there. There's something there.
I could save that money and invest it.
Right, but that's what I was gonna say. But you can't touch that money till you're 65, and we talked about it on the last episode.
That use it and they do
right, but you can't touch it till later. And it's like, no, I can have my money work for me. But with the 401k, I can't. But anyways, let's move on because I'm getting mad right now. Okay, so that's amazing. So definitely flipping is definitely your baby. That's one of your streams, or not just flipping, but real estate. You said for sure. So then, and actually, before we move on, I would love to hear the deals you've done. If you could touch on one, like the best deal that you did, numbers wise, how'd you find it? If you could give us a little bit of info, if you don't mind sharing numbers and how the numbers came out.
And then listening to previous episodes, you guys were saying how you're on opposite ends of the spectrum. Yours were all MLS. Yours were none are MLS. I've been kind of.
I'll clarify. I've half of them were MLS when I started, but then the other half have been off market. Which
and that's kind of where I fall.
I doubled my doors on the off market. Like obviously that just tells you, but I've found MLS deals too. Still this year actually. So it's amazing. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the one we're doing right now was a pocket deal. So it was going to go to pocket deal, meaning it was through an agent going to hit the market.
Okay.
And we got to it before it did. But I've done MLS. I've done off market. So the most lucrative one we've done to date really honestly should have been a teardown. It was that bad. But Blair got hit with a really, really, really bad hailstorm. And so the entire town has new windows, roofs, and siding. And so that was about really the only thing that was saving that house was that money had been invested already on it. But we did all new plumbing, all new electrical. We overlaid the entire house because it was all plaster and lath that was just terrible. Like it was. And so I partnered with my brother on that, who's a contractor. And so partnered, that was 58,000 in profit split. So, but that was just a fun, big number to see. And a really cool project to bring back to life too. That really, really should have been tear down. Like we were bidding against the neighbor who was trying to buy it to tear it down so that they could have the lot. Like that was like that's how bad it was. The one I'm probably love the most is our Stockwell House that we did. That was an estate that we picked up on MLS, and we bought it at 180 and we sold it at 290. But put 60,000 into it.
I think I drove by that one actually. I did some work across the street for somebody that was selling the house, an agent actually, and I saw it because your houses are unique. They have this look and this was just exterior. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so that one, my wife and I actually almost moved into that one. Like we loved it that much.
That's awesome.
And that
Great
had
area
this
too.
it had this tiny little like U-shaped kitchen, and we actually blew all those walls out and moved the kitchen. Kind of did the TV thing in a way, right? Like you don't move the kitchen on a flip house. Like that's stupid and it's expensive, but it completely made that house. And so that one was really, really cool. And loved doing that one too. And that one, it was the right timeline and got in and out pretty well, and was just really fun to do and a good finished product. So
that's amazing.
Those are good ones because they kind of like reinvigorate you. Because like some of them beat you up. And, you need those home runs every once in a while.
And if you could give me the other side of the spectrum, what was the worst deal you did? And did you lose money, and what did you learn out of that one?
Haven't lost money yet, which is good.
That's awesome.
The worst one was probably trying to do that new build. We bought the lot. It was and you never overpay for a deal, and we probably overpaid for the lot. And because it was covered in trees, like completely covered. And so
those trees can get expensive too.
And we were trying to do a duplex on it. But then by the time we went to the city and had to have it match all the existing, and you've got a house from 1900 here and you've got a house from 1970 here, it's like, how do I match that, right? And so plus I'm trying to do a duplex on top of it learning lessons there of, doing your due diligence ahead of time to make sure you understand, like, a piece of ground they're not all created equal, just like a house, right? They're not all created equal. And so just because you have raw land and this idea, because of the city, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to just magically do what you want to do.
Yeah. No, that's great lessons right there.
So we got out from under it is basically what happened. So didn't lose money, but got out from under it. And I drove by the other day and they're still sitting there mowing it. Like, they had somebody pulling up to mow it. And so I feel kind of bad for the person that got it. I don't know if they're fighting the same fight or what their plan is with it, but that was over a year ago and they're still sitting there mowing a vacant lot.
Yeah. And that's what I love with real estate is that even if you did lose money, which, you didn't, which is amazing. But even if you did lose money, I mean, it's a lesson. Like, you're learning. That's your
it's
college
education.
for it.
Exactly.
So that's what I love about it. That, I mean, it's worth every penny that you lose if you did. So now I want to take it back to where obviously you're building your school. It sounds crazy to say it. You probably had some butterflies right now, like just saying that. And you took us on this tour real quick. I want to cover that. I mean, there's so much to cover, but like the classroom, right? Like it's great, but like the growth you've done, it's amazing, which I want to touch on that too. Like I said, there's a lot of points, but let's take it back. So how did this come about? Like the school, like you said, it was pretty much destiny that it called you guys' name. So if you could touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still crazy to me to say that I own a school or I run a school or words I never thought that I would say. And actually words I never thought I'd text to my wife was, we're going to start a school. And that's how it started. So my wife and I were getting ready to send our oldest to kindergarten. And we had kind of gone through the gamut. Do we go to Lincoln Christian? We knew LPS wasn't for us. We're here in Lincoln, and we knew that Lincoln Public Schools wasn't for us for a lot of reasons, but one of which was we're both small town kids and we enjoyed that small town environment. So we thought maybe we'll move to Milford, Seward, the satellite communities. But we also knew we didn't want our daughter to spend the next 13 years of her life in a desk passively taking in information. And all a kid has, they don't have money to invest, right? All they have is time. And we're talking about investing in real estate. What's my return on investment, right? And what is her return on investment for that 13 years that she's going to spend in a classroom? And what real life application does that time have as soon as you get that diploma and walk out the door? And it doesn't. And it did. And so for us,
real quick, you literally saw this big problem and you like started your own school. That's an entrepreneur right there.
That's a great way to
That's amazing. Keep going. Sorry, I just wanted to point that out.
So, and the backdrop of that is I attended and for those of you that are local, you'll probably know I attended a small liberal arts college. It doesn't matter the name because it's the same. Graduating $65,000 in debt and having to sell our first house to pay off that debt. Again, what was the return on the investment, right? And I'm not using that degree. And so that's the backdrop and the lens at which I was looking at it through, plus coupled with my dad being a public school educator for 30 plus years and him saying, if you guys were Hattie's age, our 6-year-old, he said, I would not send you to a traditional school today. So all these messages were coming at us, right? And I didn't want her to buy into the idea that I did, that it's go to school to get good grades, to get into the right college, to get the good job, right? Because that's not what this economy and that's not what the workforce that they're going to graduate into is. And so we were trying to figure out what is that option? What is that thing that doesn't mean that she's coming home in kindergarten with homework after being at school for 8 hours a day? And that's kind of where we all started. And over the course of the last year, let's see. So this was February of 2020, so just before the pandemic hit, I discovered this school called Acton Academy that was founded in Austin, Texas, and I happened.
Was this during the time that you were thinking of
yes,
this?
Okay, it was all the exact time. So we're still not sure what we're going to do.
So it hasn't even. Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're still not sure what we're going to do with school, and I come across a post about this business fair. Kids business fair where kids get to build their own businesses, basically lemonade stand on steroids, right? Where we invite the public. And that was up in Omaha. And then I was like, this is amazing. We're going to do this for Hattie. Oh my gosh, there's a school tied to this. Oh my gosh, there's 275 schools like this around the world. And I literally binge watched every video I could, read everything I could for that day, and sent one of the videos to my 9-month pregnant wife and said, this is what we've been waiting for. We're going to start a school.
So wait, your wife was pregnant when you were thinking about this?
Yeah.
I thought your daughter was like ready for this.
No. So my oldest, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So so she's 9 months pregnant with our third at the time.
Okay.
So, her brain is baby land.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I'm saying we're going to start a school. And she's like, okay, great. Like, yeah. And then she watched the video and she's like, yep. We're starting a school. So our plan was to open this upcoming fall. So fall 2021. So within 24 hours of finding Acton, we had already auditioned to open one. They've received 15,000 applications to open Actons, and there's only 275 of them around the world. So we auditioned to open one and went through all the onboarding and training.
Where are they located at?
They're out of Austin, Texas originally. Then COVID hit and we had our baby, like all at the same time. And so I was like, it's a ways off. We don't have to worry about it. We're still a year out. And then we started having conversations with people and they're like, of any year ever for us to sit around and wait for something like this is not the year. And so we're like, okay, we're going to open a school in November. And so we rushed to open, find a space, find a guide, and bring in kids. And so we did. We opened in November and of 2020 and just completed last week, completed our first year. So we needed 6 kids to open the door. That's all we needed. And I was like, we're just going to open the door and we'll just let people come as they come, kind of field of dreams, right? You build it and they'll just slowly come. And we needed 6 to open the door and we got those 6. And within a month of opening, we went to 12. And then within 6 weeks of opening, we went to 14. And you guys saw that space. Like we couldn't fit more than that. So we stopped there, but kept recruiting. And now in the fall, in this space that we're sitting in, if the city ever finally gets all the permits through, we'll have 45 students in here.
Wow.
At the time when we were initially supposed to open for the first time. And that doesn't even touch on why Acton is so different, but just talks about how fast this is growing.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Like I said, we were in the classroom. You walked us through it, and seeing that classroom and now a whole building. That's amazing.
And can you talk about like the age ranges that you're going to be having now?
Yeah, so we opened pre-K through 5th grade last year. We ended up with one 7th grader that came in, just had been at home and really needed an environment that was welcoming and that he could thrive in. And so I was a little hesitant just having a 7th grader in there with preschoolers and how that would work, but he was an awesome leader, and just it was so cool to see the young ones latch onto him and him be a leader and kind of come back out of his shell. We say kids are resilient, but this was a brutal year on everybody, right? And let alone kids. And so to see him kind of rebound was really awesome. So this year will be pre-K through 8th grade, and then we'll grow into a high school right behind the camera eventually. So
and that's amazing how you took that action. You saw that void, and in Lincoln, I mean, there's a lot of homeschoolers. Like there really is, and you're literally opening this door. So I mean, the vision, I can definitely see you owning a few buildings in the future.
So technically we're an exempt school, like I talked about off air, and that's the equivalent of homeschool co-op or homeschool group. But we have just as many kids that have come from public as have come from private, as have come from homeschool backgrounds.
And if you could touch on that a little bit, what were and not to bash in the public system, right? But what did you see that you didn't want, and what are you doing different?
What we saw was an ineffective, outdated system. The last time that education was truly reformed was in 1893.
Wow.
And that was to prepare for a workforce that needed to go into factories and to be good employees, right? And that's not where we are today. We don't even need our employees to be the computer anymore. We don't need them to be the one that can memorize all the facts or to do mental math really well. Like, how many times were the three of us told in school, you'll never have a calculator in your
pocket?
God,
that's my favorite saying.
And now we hold these things that have more computer power and more brain power than anything ever in the history of the world in our pocket. So what we need in the next workforce and in the future, and this generation of our kids, that what they need is they need the soft skills. They need the leadership skills. They need the people skills. They need to be able to sell. They need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to take a stance and defend what they believe in and do it respectfully from the person across the screen or across the world or across the table from them. But we need effective leaders in our country, and we don't have those right now. And so that's what this school focuses on. In a lot of ways, academics is a backseat thing to us. We believe that if we develop the human and we develop the child to be a productive member of society, the academics will follow, right? It doesn't matter how good of curriculum or how good the classroom is set up or how the accolades of the teacher. If we're not producing good humans, what are we doing? And if they aren't in the right mental state in that classroom, whether in person or virtually, it doesn't matter how good we are at taking tests or how good we are at memorizing facts. We still aren't producing human beings that can function and thrive in society. I just had a conversation with a mom this week whose child was very, very much struggling. Like, I mean, beyond anything I could comprehend for that age, mentally. And, like I told her, you are not looking for the best academic setting. Like, that does not matter to you right now. What matters to you and your son is getting him mentally healthy. And so I always get, what's your curriculum, right? Like, and what I say is, we don't really care about that part. What we care about in our curriculum, if you will, is to build character-filled human beings. And through that, they will have the courage from overcoming all of these tests and these failures that naturally come through life, right? And that's what we're trying to do, is build character-filled human beings that have courage to take on everything that life throws at them.
So it's very mental, which I love, because I definitely agree with that. Even I remember probably the best thing that I got out of school, and this was in high school, was read a book. But they never told me what books. I always say, like, I remember some Holly character on a book. So when I read it, I was like, why did they tell me to read these books? And it was recommended by the reading teacher, and it didn't do nothing for me. But if they were recommending me, actually, perfect. You like what I did there? Perfect transition there. If you were recommending me a book like that, which if you could touch on that, like, why is that book with you?
Yeah.
And I feel like you have that book everywhere, like on social media. I've seen you kind of holding it and stuff.
Yeah. So Courage to Grow is the book. And that one is just telling the Acton story. So it's just the background of telling everything that is Acton. So we don't do tests. We don't do homework. We don't do teacher-led lectures. It's all learner-driven. Our guides aren't there to answer questions. They're there to ask good questions. So it's all trying to build that problem-solving muscle and reflex in children as young as 5 years old. So that's what this book is particularly about, is just the background and how Acton came to be. But going off of your story there, so the difference for us we're not going to say in English class that that this child at this age needs to read this book and do a book report, right? What we're going to do is say, here's an awesome list of books. You go read what excites you. And if you would like to go out and write something that is in the real world, so go review it on goodreads.com after you've done it instead of, right? So it's all real world application things. We were talking about, how I found Acton in the first place. Every year our students build real businesses, and right outside our school here, this spring we hosted the business fair. We had 40 booths, both from our students and the general public, and had probably about 400 people come through. And they sold real products and real services for real money. And that happens every single year.
That's amazing.
And so it's just trying to take all the things that we didn't learn that we wished we would: personal finance, profit and loss, how to negotiate.
Can I sign up?
Yeah, right.
Can I enroll?
No, seriously though, and that's kind of, I actually have an ad coming out in a local magazine it says we are the school you wish you would have gone to.
Literally.
Right? Like, what are all the things that we wish we would have learned in our time at school that we didn't, right?
And I feel like that's one of the biggest thing we hear over and over. I wish I would have known all this sooner. Yep. And so you're setting these kids up, I mean, majorly from the beginning. Like that's amazing. I was, I don't know, probably 27, 26, 28, maybe around there, late 20s, when I started reading, the right stuff and do, the mindset and stuff. And same thing. I wish I would have, this would have been amazing. Like,
yeah. So we're actually, my wife and I are going together, and I'm kind of trying to bring my like personal canon of books together. Right. And one of my thoughts is that all of our graduates will kind of go through like a seminar with me almost by the time they graduate. And so here's my personal canon of books that we're going to read together and we're going to discuss and all of that. So that's one piece. Another piece is, from middle school all the way through high school, they'll complete 10 to 15 internships and apprenticeships by the time they graduate. Wow. So you're not spending the next 4 years in college going and doing this program that you think you want to do and have never actually experienced, right? So real world application, real world experience, so that when I do graduate, I can go to that 4-year university if I want to.
Real quick, you when I walked in earlier and you were telling my daughter, because she was here earlier, that you can graduate with your real estate license. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But absolutely. I mean, why not? Right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
If that's the route you want to go and go down that, you want to be a personal trainer, let's get you your personal training license before you graduate, so that when you graduate, you can go straight into business. And you've been building a business since you were in kindergarten every single year for our business fair. And you've experienced all of that, and you take that into the real world right away. And if it doesn't work, great. And you go back to college 2 years later if you need to, right? Or there's plenty of Acton graduates now, because this is, worldwide and has been around long enough. There's plenty of Acton graduates that are getting hired directly out of high school over top of college graduate applicants.
It makes me think of like the MBA, for example. Kobe, like he went straight from high school. And so, I mean, in theory, you're creating all these Kobe's like that. And that's what I love about this, is that you always hear that, right? Like, it all starts with our kids, with our little ones. It's so true, right? Like, it all starts there, but what are we doing to get them going? And you're over here creating this whole community. So I can't wait for the future, just locally here, like Lincoln, all these leaders that are gonna be coming out of your building and stuff. And it's crazy, Zach, because before, so I did my dumb stuff growing up, right? Like, no guidance, single mom. And so in my mind, I wanted to be a teacher, because after I got my stuff settled, and I tried going to college. It didn't work out. My immigration stuff is really what happened there. So that they took my financial aid away. So, which was like a blessing in disguise, because like I probably would be a Spanish teacher or, whatever, social studies. But even that right there, though, looking back now, what if I would have become a Spanish teacher? Like, I wouldn't be teaching. I mean, obviously Spanish, right? It would be great. But my mindset was, what can we do for these kids? And so you took that action, like you started a whole school, like, which is amazing. And I love that because like I said, that was in my mind, I'm like, well, if I could work for a public school, maybe I can help out these kids that are going through the same situation. Exactly.
And take it to another level.
Yeah. And I think a point of clarification, because I do get into trouble with my family that's public school educators. This has nothing to do with the individual educator. It has nothing to do with the individual administrator. It's the system as a whole, right? And those individuals have no power over that. They have power over the lives that they touch, and they do an amazing job with those and within the confines of what they can work with. But my dad said it very, very well. He said, the last 10 years of my career, the classroom was not mine. He said it was the school boards, it was the parents, and it was the students' classroom, and I was just there. And so this has nothing to do with those individuals. It's a system that, again, 1893 was the last time that it was truly, truly revamped, and it was specifically for that. Like, if you go back and you want to do your research, you will not find that. You'll find that I'm telling you the truth and not lying. That it was geared to produce factory workers. And
well, and you hear that all the time, though. At least on the minority mindset, right? Like, you hear that all the time where that's what school's doing. They're producing employees, which, like I said, it's part of our system, right? Like, but now though, everything has changed. The technology, like everything is different now, and especially that year. I mean, like that's a whole other era. But no, that's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. So what does a typical day look like for a kid?
Yeah. So we go 8:30 to 3:15. So length of the day is pretty similar to traditional. But they arrive anywhere from 8:05 to 8:25. They're responsible for being here on time. If they're late, regardless if it's their fault or their parents' fault, they have to miss the first thing that we do for the day, which is at 8:30, and that's called our launch. And that's a Socratic conversation. So the guide throws a prompt out there, provides a real world high class example of what this thing is, and just asks a question, and then they start debating, and they take their sides, and they just critically analyze and critically think through whatever has been thrown out, and they learn how to take a stand, they learn how to form an argument, and they learn how to respectfully disagree across the table.
We need a lot of that,
right?
These days.
Man, I'm like just
so that's every single morning.
Blown away right now.
And like I said, they're responsible for being on time. Just a life lesson right there off the bat. And then that leads them into their what we call core skills. So core skills for us is what you have to have, right? Your reading, writing, arithmetic, and they work on that for the bulk of their morning. That's all individualized. It's all learner driven, and it's using gamified software to teach them. So there's no instructor at the front of the classroom teaching them. It's all at their own individualized pace, and it's all in a mixed age classroom as well. So you'll have a kindergartner in there with a first grader. You'll have a second grader in the same room as a fifth grader. So they can lean on each other for help as they go as well. But they're all learning at their own pace. So you might have a fourth grader that really struggles in English, so they might be working at a second grade level, and I could care less. You might have a third grader that loves math and completes an entire year's worth of math in 4 weeks, and I could care less, right? So they just keep going at their own pace and as they need to. When you think about something like math that builds on itself in a traditional setting, what do? We open the book, we all look at it at the same time, we turn the page at the same time, we take the quiz at the same time, we take the test at the same time, and then we go on to the next thing. And you might get a C, I might get a B, and you might get an A, and we're all on to the next thing that built on it. And now you have this horrible Swiss cheese slice of learning, right? Where all these holes are in your learning, versus how we're doing it where you don't move on until you get an A because you've mastered that. And now you move on to the next building block, and you might do it in a day and you move on to the next building block. So that's the bulk of their morning. And then we also do writer's workshop thrown in there for the older ones. And that's just a writing prompt that they work on. And that's the same thing for 4 to 6 weeks that they're working on. And they just do revision after revision and just learn how to write in the real world. So this year they pitched a field trip. So they researched and came up with a budget and everything. And then they pitched field trip ideas to each other. They wrote a letter to their hero. They studied poetry and wrote their own poem. Next year, I think we'll do a blog post and they'll write web copy, like doing real things, right, that matter in the real world rather than, writing a book report or whatever. And then in the afternoon, depending on the day, we either go into civilization, which is looking at ancient civilizations. So that's kind of our history, humanities, art, all in one. And we study that through the lens of how did that look in this civilization at this time. But it also provides us those hard questions that we can ask at the same time of how did this society view this thing or whatever. And then our quests. And the quests are those real world hands-on projects. Again, they spend 4 to 6 weeks working on those. This year, they did the human body. So they studied the human body for 4 weeks. And my kindergartner was learning the same stuff as the 7th grader.
Wow.
in that room. They spent 4 weeks getting ready for the business fair and preparing their businesses.
How many weeks?
4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Learning profit and loss, learning marketing, business, writing a business plan. We did a process drama play as well. So touching on lots of different topics.
Yeah.
We'll never cover the breadth of subjects that the traditional system covers, but we go really, really deep into subjects and helping them learn how to learn. And then if something excites you in this subject area, now you can go and learn about it yourself.
As you were saying that, I was actually thinking to myself exactly what you said. Like, you're not going to cover the whole range that the public school system covers because you're so focused on, like you said, on the child themselves rather than just subject matter. But then I also thought to myself, well, that would be to a parent that's very comfortable in the public school system. That's going to be a quick thing, a wall for them. But then I also realized, like, well, but you're also teaching them the skills so that they can actually think critically and do the research themselves.
Well, and I don't
regurgitating.
Right, and I don't need any student to know facts about the War of 1812, right? And memorize that. Like, go look it up. Learn how to do the research. Right. Learn how to critically think and look at what you're reading and say, is this true? Is this factual? That's what we need, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much information out there. We could never take it in our lifetime, but we have to be able to critically think and critically analyze information. So yeah. And there's, the way that I say it is, we are a school for anyone, but we're not going to be for everyone. Right. And I know that. And we're looking to build this school to be 125 to 150 students total. I don't need everybody in Lincoln
that's going to be next month. That's going to be next month.
I don't need that. So I know what we are. I know what we're doing, and I can stand by that and know that it's going to work for that 150 students that are here. So the space here, back to my friend, one of the realtors, Jamie Shelton. He actually is a co-owner of the before and after school program that's over here. And so when I said we're starting a school, he said, I've got a space for you. And so that was awesome to like not have to go searching.
Zach, real quick, what I love about your story is everything just happened. Like the destiny, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm a huge believer in that. Like, everything comes to you at the perfect time. I guarantee you, even though how fast it's grown, but even a year before that, you wouldn't have been ready for it, if that makes sense. Like it all comes at the perfect time. So I love that.
No, absolutely. And make no mistake about this. It's 100% God working all through this story that we're talking about. It has nothing to do with me. I'm simply a tool, right? And but I'm willing to step out in faith, right? And that's a big thing, is that you have to be willing to step out in faith and take the action and know that it's going to come behind you. I had no idea that we'd be sitting in this space today when I was redoing that tiny little space over there. So Jamie said, I've got a space. It's small, but it'll get you going. So we took over 2 former offices in their space. But what that gave us access to was their indoor facility with the gym and the soccer field and their outdoor space. And so, otherwise, I was going to be looking for like office building space in Lincoln, and it's just concrete jungle for all of those, right? And so that was awesome to find. And then when we also found that there's 10,000 square feet sitting here empty right next door to them in the same building that we could eventually grow into, I was, this is perfect. And so we'll take about half of that space this year and build out 3 studios. So last year we were operating all in one studio space, but we'll have a pre-K through first grade studio, a second grade through fifth grade studio, and then kind of a middle school. And like you mentioned, stretching into high school a little bit. It's really a middle school studio with a couple of students that just really, really, really want to be here. And so we said yes. But eventually we'll take all 10,000 square feet here. Our middle school will kind of move like I showed you guys and triple in size of that space that they have. And then this space that we're sitting in can house about 110 to 120 students total. And gives us, like I said, all that outdoor space and access to that, and then fundamentals, gym, and indoor space too. So once we hit that space, then we would be looking to build or buy from there. But very, very excited and blessed to have this space, and excited to finally see it start to come together.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. If you don't mind, once it's done, I'd love to tour it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once it's finished up. So I want to touch a little bit, pick your brain on what are the pros and cons that you've like maybe backslash that you've had. I'm sure there is, and then the positive of it as well. If you could end it with the positive, but let's talk on some of the backslash that you've had. You mentioned even teachers kind of coming at you a little bit. Like if you could touch on that, just and what you would say to them, with the backslash that you've gotten.
Yeah. We really haven't gotten a lot, so I don't want to overstate that. I think more than ever, people realize we need an alternative. We're not taking anything away from the public schools. They're still going to get their money from our insanely high property taxes, right? We're not taking anything away from them. What we're doing is giving people an alternative, and a true alternative that's needed now more than ever. One, from everything we just covered in the broken system that isn't preparing them for the future that they face, right? But 2, from a believer standpoint, and we aren't a faith-based school necessarily, but we are a critically thinking school. And so we are never going to push critical race theory, and we are never going to push comprehensive sex education. We are going to say that we are Americans. We are in the freest country ever in the history of the world. And yes, we are imperfect, and we have never lived up to the ideals of our founding fathers that they set forth perfectly, right? But the way to get to those ideals is not to tear this entire thing down and try and start again. It's to grow great leaders that can work us towards that. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do in a lot of ways. So starting out for my wife and I, it was no homework, or the homework, sitting in desks, and just not liking the overall structure of school. And now it's, over the course of COVID in the last year, it's really become that, right? We need the critical thinking and the critical analysis of what's going on. So we've actually seen far, far more public school teachers, public school, and I shouldn't say public, traditional setting teachers and administrators come to us and say, what you are doing is amazing and it's needed now more than ever. We've had, my wife has literally had teachers crying on her shoulder saying, I wish that I could be a part of what you are doing, because that's why I wanted to get to be a teacher, I wanted to impact, and I'm not able to do that. And I'm seeing all of the stuff coming down the pipe, and I don't want any part of it. So it's actually been much more the other side. And obviously with the growth we've seen, Lincoln's been, amazing and supportive of it. And I'm super excited for that next phase as we get into middle school and high school, where we can start tapping into a lot of the startups and the small businesses and sending our students out for those internships and apprenticeships and really make it this amazing, cohesive program.
Wow, that's amazing.
What's the like when you look at the demographic of the kids that you get in the families that Acton is a good fit for? What would you say that looks like?
Same as walking into the grocery store. Yep. Listening to this, you might think that we're getting the best and the brightest of the students and only high income earning families could ever afford a private education. We have working class families. We have single moms. Multiple single moms, actually.
That's amazing.
We have families that are coming from the right school districts outside of town that are coming here. We have doctors and lawyers that are coming here too, and one of them has an awesome testimony and thinking that they couldn't even afford to send their 3 kids here, right? So it doesn't, regardless of what incomes you're at, everybody knows about lifestyle creep and right. So it doesn't matter. It's still a sacrifice to everybody. And that's ultimately what it is I saw a post not that long ago from Candace Owens. I don't know if either of you guys follow her, but she said, public school isn't free. It's costing you the mind of your child.
Wow.
And so these families that are saying they want to come here are saying that I don't want it. That is not worth the money to me. Right. And so what we're giving in a lot of ways then is kind of priceless. So it's all over the board, every walk of life. I'm actually really excited from just a demographic standpoint. We're actually, I think, doing a lot better from a minority standpoint than I thought we would. Just being a private school in South Lincoln, like, you think, right.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that for all the right reasons and
for
not
sure.
feeling like we're just setting up this little bubble, if you will. So,
I do think you're right there, because when you look at the location, the type private school, you kind of just assume.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's I was kind of interested in, because I saw a lot of the kids that you have up there, and I thought there was a good mix in there. So I think it's important for people to hear that it's not just for wealthy families type of thing. Like you're essentially you're growing entrepreneurs, and public school system doesn't really do that. Except they grow employees, and so I remember because I've kind of educated myself on Acton too, and I remember an example on one of the Zoom calls, and you had mentioned how outside of just like right now with the public school system, kids learn about politics, obviously, and just kind of how our system runs. There was a great example that you had mentioned that, to me, that's kind of how I took it, how we're responsible for the representatives that represent us. I don't know if you remember the example, would you be able to go into it? Because I think that was a really great way to show how these ideas and these practices are actual, like, real life things, not just something that you read in a book.
Yeah.
And take responsibility.
Yep. Yeah. Personally responsible individuals is really what we're trying to do here, right? And so the way in which Acton is set up is just layer upon layer of processes and systems, and that's the only way that you can begin to remove the adult from the equation in a classroom setting, right? A traditional setting. And so it's all these processes and systems that are in place to continue to push responsibility and push everything on the learners themselves and away from the adult, and allow them to fall further and further into the background. Case in point, down in Austin, the original campus, that high school guide, he spends 3 hours total actively in that studio a week. Could you imagine just in a day spending 3 hours in a normal setting, right? With high schoolers? Like, it's just and because they've been around for so long and have it all running so smoothly, and everyone's come up through that system, they're used to it, and they just do run it, right? And ultimately what it is it's its own mini society, and that's how everything's set up. So they have their own monetary system that they can fine each other. They have their own town council, which is kind of what you were talking about, where they can go in and say, okay, this is the issue that's at hand. Who's at fault? Why are you at fault? And how do we move forward from this? They have a strike system where they can impose strikes upon individuals for behavior and for issues, and try and mitigate those behavior issues. They can earn that money from doing work and earning points from doing their core skills and working on the things they're supposed to be working on. So it's all set up as this own mini society. And then specifically the one that you brought up is they had a town council meeting that involved the brother of one of the individuals that was sitting on the town council. And so when everything came out, basically they wrongly voted in favor of the brother, right? And it was because the brother, and so I mean, that's life, right? Like that's real life, is that our systems aren't perfect. Our judicial system, as good as it is, it's not perfect. Prosecution is definitely not perfect, right? But that's life, and there's a life lesson in that. And so the guide said, well, what do we do differently next time? And so they kind of worked through it, and they decided that in cases like that, it's not that you can't vote siblings onto the town council, but they would need to recuse themselves in future when a sibling was up for the issue. And they came to that all on their own, and figured that out. So problem solving, and working through a real issue in life.
I love that. Like I said, I remember when I heard that the first time, because I mean they're doing it better than our politicians are.
Yeah.
Because how many times do people not recuse themselves from situations that there's a conflict of interest, and they're learning that at such a young age, and it's also teaching just ethics. Like it's just not the right thing to do. So that was great example.
And so all this great stuff, like where can I sign up my kids? Where can people find you? Where what's the website and everything?
Acton, Acton Academy Lincoln.com. That's going to have all the information. You can get a free information kit that'll get emailed to you right away and kind of walk you through stuff. I was talking to your wife before this, and we've got a lot of great videos on there, none that are ours yet, because we weren't established quite enough to have those last year, but I'm excited to do that this next year. So we're borrowing a lot from our parent school in Austin for that, but it just really shows what this actually looks like in real life. Obviously we're growing this, so we're not to the execution level that they are yet. But that has all the information there. And then we have a pretty in-depth audition process. And really what we're looking at is who are the parents and what are their mindsets, and then who is each individual child on their own in that family, and what are they like. And parents, we have to see that you're willing to let your child fall down and scrape their knee, and you're not going to be the one running in and grabbing them and wrapping an ace bandage around them in no time flat, right? They have to be willing to fail, and you have to be willing to allow them to fail, and you also have to allow us as owners to screw up, because we're learning this as well. So we've been really, really strict on that. And then each individual child, we've got to see, some personal responsibility there, because they are ultimately responsible for the learning. We're going to set up, processes and systems, and gamify it and give them, rewards, but they have to ultimately take ownership of that. And so we have to see that age appropriate wise, right? We got to be able to see that. And then we're really not set up for like severe learning disabilities, because it's so independent. ADHD, we'll have some high functioning autistic children next year too. Those tend to do well. But more severe stuff, we're just not equipped for that. So that's going to kind of be something there. And then just looking at that child and who they are, and do they feel like the right fit. The book Courage to Grow, we ask all parents to read that as part of that, so that they understand what we're building and what we're trying to do and the ideas behind it. And then from there, we move forward and actually invite each child to come in for a day and experience Acton, so we can see them operating in the studio, and then move forward with an enrollment invite if it fits. So that's kind of the process. But ActonAcademyLincoln.com, obviously we're on Facebook and Instagram, from just seeing what real life looks like too, for us. And very, very excited to continue to grow. And we'd love to have your family. So
no, that's amazing. And is there something that somebody can bring to the table right now that you're looking for, whether and not just with the school, but just overall? Like what are you?
Good question. What we're looking for from a school standpoint right now, everyone and their dog is hiring, right? Like, so we're trying to find somebody with the right mindset, that has some Montessori background experience, that can come in and be an assistant guide because we've seen that crazy growth. I've already hired 3 full-time guides, and we got to hire at least 1 part-time guide. We're also hiring.
I'm unemployed, so
We're also hiring a music and art guide, and then like a PE.
I do
and
music too.
outdoor.
See, are you interviewing me right now? That's fine.
And a PE and outdoor
Mhm.
guide as well. So from a personnel standpoint, that's where we're at. From a if you own your own business and doing your own thing, we'd love to connect with you, because in the future, I'm sure we'll have a hero that's interested in whatever area you're doing, and we would love to be able to send internships your way. And with those, we do none of the legwork. That's 100% on that learner to go out and solicit that job, sit through the interview, send out a resume, write their resume. That's all on them. So that, yeah, none of that's us hand holding through that.
Amazing. And real quick before I move on to the questions that we normally ask all our guests, I would love to hear like what's been your favorite book, mindset book, personal growth book, business book of all time, and if you could give me one sentence, that way, in case we haven't read it or somebody hasn't read it.
So hard
Hey, I gotta build it up, bro. You were thinking the question, right? You're like, what is my favorite?
Yes, I should have come prepared for that. I really enjoy reading. Usually readings in.
See, and I'm glad you didn't come prepared, because that's what we like. It's something just raw and.
Yeah. I just finished The Richest Man Who Ever Lived. Really, really good. Follows Solomon through the book of Proverbs, and kind of puts real world today application to the book of Proverbs. And it was really, really good. And that will be one that I go back to. Every book you guys have mentioned on the podcast so far at the beginning, I've either read or is on my list. So all those are awesome books. But that one just comes to mind since I just finished it. And as I'm kind of going back through all the books to put together for those high schoolers, I told my wife, I said, there's probably going to be like 3 or 4 books from now on that I read every single year. And then I just add my new ones to that, because there's something to be said of taking, like Doug said, there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's so, and Doug's book would be one of those. Like if you haven't read One Shot, One Life, it's a super fast read. But there's nothing new under the sun to take in. How are you implementing what you're learning, right? How are you implementing what you're reading? And I think we get lost in reading, and never actually implementing. And so that's kind of where I want to go with the next phase of my reading, is to stop just reading and start implementing some of those more.
No, I love that. And with that being said, we're going to ask you the questions that we ask all our guests. So the first question that I have for you, and we'll transition into it. If you were to write a book yourself, what would be the title and the theme of it?
The theme would follow a book that I read in learning about Acton, and it's called Unschooling Rules. And it's 52 or 56 rules about trying to unlearn what we have learned, right?
Wow.
And do it differently, and how, if we could go back and rebuild school, what would it look like? And a lot of those are Acton. So I loved it though, because it was a super fast read, and basically each page was one rule, and then it led immediately into the next rule. And with a lot of books, it's just, you get so much extra to it, and like I want the meat and potatoes out of it. And so I decided, one, from a writing it standpoint, that's way faster and easier. And two, from a readability standpoint, I loved that. So if I ever write a book, I think it will be in that structure of a set number of rules, and they just roll one into the next. And then it would be on the concept of intentionality. Whether that's in business, whether that's in life, your relationships, your family, parenting. Like if we were all just more intentional, and that kind of goes back to the implementation of what you're reading. Like if we were just more intentional with everything we were doing, we'd be so much more successful. And parenting is really, really hard, because it requires intentionality and showing up every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know necessarily what the title would be, but it would be on intentionality and just kind of the idea of creating that momentum through being extremely intentional with everything you do.
I love that. I love that. And my next question to you is, if there is a 3-step formula for success, what are they?
Well, I guess I got to say being intentional is one of them. So probably pairing what from Doug's episode and what I just talked about. So setting priorities, clear priorities, not goals. You know, he kind of dived into that a little bit and why that's important. And then working to implement those priorities and being very intentional with that entire thing.
Okay.
I think that would be the 3 steps for sure.
Amazing. And then if you had to look back at yourself now, at your younger self, what are some of the advice that you would give yourself?
I was the same as you in high school. I hated to read. I got an A in our reading, whatever that English class was, my sophomore year, that we just read books, and I never read a single one of them. I just was able to take the tests and figure it out, and I hated reading. But it's because it didn't apply to my. It's the same as people say with the Bible, right? It doesn't apply to my life. Well, if you would go in and try to actually apply it and be intentional, then it does apply, right? And so the biggest thing I would do differently or give advice would be to read sooner and find those things that excited me that I would be reading and learning about. And then I would honestly really challenge myself to drop out of college.
Wow.
I had an opportunity my freshman or sophomore year. I was working for a guy flipping houses. And he now owns 130 rentals in Omaha. And so I worked for him, and I also worked for Hausman Construction, which is office just over here, in college as well. And just seeing where both of those companies have gone. From that time. And the fact that I'm back to flipping houses anyway now, and why did I
after the debt and the
exactly. So I'd say that's where I'm a little countercultural now too, a little bit, even though it's not quite as countercultural as it used to be. I think that would probably be something that I would strongly look at, because really the reason I was in college was you were supposed to do it. I was a good student, so I was supposed to do it, and then I liked the sports aspect. But
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. And it's funny that you mentioned, Zach, that I didn't read the book, but I got through it. That's literally me. That's how I graduated high school. I just got by, and that, to kind of summarize what you're doing, that's why it's amazing, because I literally just got by and I did it. So
and circling back to what we're doing here with Acton, how many of your children are doing that exactly? And how many times are you saying, just do the homework because you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Just do the worksheet because you have to.
Yep.
That's the entire system. It's geared to just do it to get through it so I can get on with my life, rather than come here and thrive for that entire amount of time, return on investment of the time you're here, and really discover who you are before you even leave our roofs, right?
Yeah.
And how much better set up for success would we have been if we had that?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I hate to leave, but real quick, where can people find you yourself?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, but I'm never on LinkedIn. So Facebook, and you can just search me, Zach Harsin, Harsin. But otherwise, real estate side is Mana Homes, and there's a Facebook page for that. And then Acton Academy Lincoln as well. Super would love to interact with anybody, advice or learning more about Acton or what I'm doing with real estate, any of that. I'm happy to share and invest back in you.
So make sure you guys follow Zach. Again, I just wanted to clarify that, because I think earlier you just gave us the school and, for you personally, and you just gave us your real estate stuff too. So amazing. But again, good things come to an end, and I hate to leave right now, but this has been amazing. Thank you for having us here. I'm definitely looking forward to everything you got going on here. It's amazing. But everybody out there, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube, The Minority Report Podcast. And then don't forget to follow us on that Minority Report Podcast on Instagram. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can find a podcast, we're on there. So make sure you guys follow us and let's get it, baby. Vamonos.
To being wealthy, my hand to please don't segregate. Dress in a suit, I can't relate. Minority report, can't ignore being rich from poor and your credit score. My hand to please don't segregate. Dress in a suit, I can't relate. Minority report, can't ignore being rich from